Good evening and welcome to the Arundel Camera Club meeting for Thursday, March 28th. My name is John Milliker and I'm the club president for the 2023-2024 season. The Arundel Camera Club was founded in 1957 and exists to promote the art, science, and education in all aspects and fields of photography. For more information about us, please visit www.arundelcameraclub.org. We are currently meeting at the Severna Park Baptist Church, located at 506 Benfield Road, Severna Park, Maryland. And if you are local to the Anne Arundel County, Maryland area, we highly encourage you to come visit us. Before we move on to tonight's contest, do we have any announcements from officers? Was that a hi to the new person, or was that a I have an announcement? Okay, that was a hi to the new people. Yeah, we're... this is our last open contest of the year. Looks like we've got a good stack for the unlimiteds, not so much for the novices, but Bob will talk to us a little bit about how that's going to handle. We do have the eclipse happening pretty soon. We do need to get an official email out for that, but there is a large group of us that are going up to around the Pittsburgh area on Sunday the 7th of April, and then the morning of the 8th, try to figure out where a clear sky is going to be, and then kind of go from there. We are encouraging people to carpool if you can. Also, we have the camping trip coming up in July. If you need information about that, please send that to me or any of your officers, and we'll get that to you. And then let's move over to Christine for calendar stuff.
Good evening. Next week on April 4th, we have a program by Betsy Wilson on a different point of view. On April 11th is our digital contest for April with the theme of night photography. On April 18th, we have a program by Victoria Gray on, I believe it's portraiture. On April 25th is our next color and monochrome print contest, also with the theme of night photography. And then on May 2nd, we have a program by me on cyanotypes. So that's the schedule, and I will turn
Tell
this...
Tell us about cyanotypes.
Cyanotypes?
The meeting.
Oh, this is going to be a little different of a program. It has I will talk a little bit about it, about the history and about what cyanotypes are, but there's also going to be a hands-on portion. We'll be sending out an email, and it's also will be in the newsletter. If you want, you can send pictures to John and I, and we will print out negatives that you can make cyanotypes from. $5 per picture, up to, was it two pictures you can send us, and we will print those for you. And it'll be on a carbon, so it's darker than normal negatives, so that it's nice and dense and it'll work really well. And if you're not a paid member, it's $5 per person to participate in the hands-on portion, just to help cover the chemistry. And if you're a paid member, it's free. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, but it's going to be a fun night. And again, it's a hands-on program plus a little history of photography involved. And I believe that's all I have on that. Bob, I'm going to hand the program over to you.
Okay, we're trying something a little different tonight. We're going to run the contest with a skeleton crew, i.e. me. Ron didn't give me a bio for our judge, who is Rod Barr. So I'm going to drop him into it and ask him to give us a little background of his experience in photography. Rod?
I have been a regular judge at quite a few camera clubs in the Washington, Baltimore area for a number of years. I taught photography for, I think, 4 years at the Maryland College of Art and Design in Silver Spring. I've had a number of one-person and small group exhibits around the state of Maryland, from Annapolis to Hagerstown and in between. And I was a black and white photographer, darkroom photographer for 40 years. Finally succumbed to the ease of going with the computer rather than the dark room. So I still do mostly black and white, but I do also do color. And I mostly do prints. So that's enough.
Go ahead and let him keep that, Bob. Your mic is now live.
Okay. In addition to running a short crew, we actually don't have any novice images this year. This contest. Monique submitted 3 in color, and so she gets some feedback. I would suggest we put her with the Unlimiteds.
Well, with Monique not being here, I'm going to make the decision that I think she would like to have that feedback, and let's put her in.
Okay.
As long as she doesn't beat us.
Yeah,
Chair, Bob, I'd love to see these more detail. This one doesn't look like black and white to you.
That's what I would say.
I would say.
But she.
I know, but it doesn't look like color to me.
All right. Well,
Let's see what you got.
we haven't. Monique produced an image that is labeled color, but
Probably color. Because it's color. Just put it down as color.
It is.
yeah.
It's
Well,
color.
well, this,
That's what she says it is. That's what it is.
yeah.
We're not gonna second guess.
What is the acting contest chair think? Is that color or monochrome?
I would go with what she wrote, so it's color.
She might say something.
Okay.
I have not seen her.
Okay, we will start with monochrome unlimited.
Got one other gentleman coming.
You have any entries?
Oh,
He's got some entries.
oh, okay.
We started at 7. It's called 1907.
Give that.
Oh,
Right.
I got that. Go ahead.
Right. Unlimited monochrome. We read the titles. Not alone. Oh, we go through once, and then second time round you critique, etc.
Right.
Excellent. Mary, Mother of Mankind. Jesus is watching. Sunday morning. Old church.
Oops, it's vertical.
Oh, right. Franklin Fireboat. Rugged Cross. Jamila. Foggy morning. Taking a break. Prayers of the people. Enter. Blues over key. Dome of heaven. Peabody patterns. Miss Rosita. Waiting. Guardian saint. Disc heads. Mr. Temple. Sidewalk barber. Peaceful. Trinity Choir. Lost Spirits Medium. It's a long way to the top. The Farmer's Wife. Drops. Okay. The display. Decaying dreams. Grand view. Weathered wagon. Okay.
Okay, you want to,
How many was that again, Bob?
yeah, what are we looking for?
28. So that is
include Ken's?
28.
28.
So that would be what, 3 honorable mentions?
1 through 4 and 3 honorable.
Right,
That's
okay.
7 in all.
Did you also, did you include, what's your name?
Right.
I think this is a very, very nice print. The sky, the detail in the sky is held very well. Detail on the building looks very good. So I think we'll keep this in. This is a really interesting perspective on what could be a fairly routine statue photograph. Not sure the background, particularly the bottom, is kind of very distracting. And it would have been nice if somehow the photographer could have gotten even lower. Maybe that wasn't possible, and gotten rid of some of that distraction or printed it out. So I think we'll take this one out. This is a really interesting juxtaposition. As soon as I looked at it, I said, I wish the adult video sign was in front of the other sign. So Jesus could be looking at the adult video sign. But I think this is an interesting enough juxtaposition of nature and man to leave this one in. This is a really nice photograph. In my mind, there is too much of the archway, the bell. It kind of competes with the rest of the photograph. It would be much stronger, I think, if just a simple archway were framing. The photographer had just moved forward maybe 3 or 4 feet, but we'll leave this in for now. This is certainly a very well done print, very interesting. I particularly like the window at the top. I think it provides a nice balance of brightness with the brightness at the bottom. I wish the lower part were slightly darker. It's almost too bright, but we'll definitely leave this one in. This is a nice photograph, but as soon as I looked at it, I thought there's really too much conflicting. The buildings and the boat and the dock are just sort of all kind of too much of a mishmash, too jumbled together. So even though it's a very nicely done print and very interesting boat and everything about it looks good, I think it just doesn't quite work because there's just too much conflict between the various elements here. There's no delineation, so I think we'll take that one out. Well, the tilted cross at the top kind of is the best part of this, but this photograph is basically a pretty muddy print. It needs to be a lot more contrasty. The elements need to stand out in this print, and so even though I kind of like that tilted cross, we're going to take this one out. This is a really nicely composed, beautifully lit photograph. I'll definitely keep this one in. This is a well-done photograph. The curving of the bridge helps, but I think it's too much just straight ahead. It needs something, if there was more of the curving bridge visible. It looks like you can barely see it, but there's not enough of it. It looks too much like it's all vertical lines. So I think even though it's a very nicely seen and printed photograph, we're going to take this one out. I think this is a very nicely printed photograph, taken and printed. I wish somehow the subject were a little bit bigger. It's kind of dominated by the foreground, but nonetheless, I think we'll keep this one in. This is really nicely printed, but there really isn't much subject. There are too many candles to be the subject of the picture, and the background is not sharp, which is understandable because the light was probably very bad here, but I think it just doesn't quite work because there's really no place for your eye to go. You just kind of wander amongst all the candles, so we're going to take this one out. This is nicely done, but the shadows are kind of distracting, and the very bright area, particularly on the lower left, bothers me. It kind of leads you right out of the picture. It doesn't. The bright area and leading to the doorway leads you in, but there's really too much differentiation between the bright areas here and the shadows just kind of break up the picture, so I think it just doesn't work for me very well, so we're going to take that one out. I need to look at this one up close to see exactly what okay. I wanted to make sure what I was seeing. This is a really nicely done photograph. I think it would have worked better if there were less of the photograph and a little bit more of the airplanes, which are kind of what make it a particularly interesting picture. But we'll still leave this one in because it's very nicely done, very well printed. This is a really different perspective, which is kind of nice to see something different. But whatever's going on at the top, it bothers me. I wish that were not there. I'd much rather see the picture cropped off without that top strip at the top. I don't know what it is, and it just doesn't seem to me, even though it was obviously part of the picture, it doesn't seem to work with the rest of the picture. So even though it's very nicely printed and really interesting, I think we're going to take that out because that top just kind of, for me, it messes it up. This is very nicely printed, very nice, but this is just kind of a photograph that you see something and you take it and you do a good technical job, but it's not nearly as interesting or challenging as a lot of the other photographs. So I think we're going to take this one out. Well, this is obviously very nicely lit, very nicely composed. Obviously, whoever did this didn't get their photograph properly aligned in the mat. And so it's got a corner there, which is really a no-no, if you can see that. It's the print is at an angle down in the lower left. But I think the print is just moved. Yeah, it's just shifted. But I mean, the fact is you shouldn't, if you're going to put it in the mat, you shouldn't do that. We'll leave that in, but that's kind of a real no-no. I always harp on presentation, and I think that's a case where the presentation could have been very nice, but it turned out to be kind of a minor disaster. I want to look at this very. Okay, I wanted to see if there was any detail in the branches. There basically isn't. I think a photograph like this, the subject matter isn't interesting enough to do a true silhouette. It would work a lot better, I think, if there were some detail. The sky is good, but the sky is not enough to really kind of elevate it. So I think we'll take this one out. This is certainly very nicely photographed, very nicely printed. I don't think it's as interesting as some of the others, but we'll leave this in because it's a very nicely, technically a really nice photograph. Well, this is certainly one of the more creative photographs in this group. And to me, I'm having a hard time focusing. It kind of pulls you yin and yang every way. But we'll leave this in just because it is creatively, I think, a lot more interesting than some of the others. The photographer's done something more, so we'll leave that one in. This is another very nicely done photograph, portrait. I wish there were a little bit more detail on the right side of the face. but it's very nicely done, and it seems to capture the subject, so we'll leave that one in. I think this really doesn't work for me because the subject, the person who's receiving the haircut or the shave, his face is completely covered, completely masked. And so we have a bunch of shapes here, and it's hard. I mean, the most defining thing in this picture is the wristwatch. And that should not be the sort of the thing that your eye goes to. The hand is interesting, but I think that there's too many elements going on here, and the fact that the subject need to see a little bit more of the face, I think, than seen here. So I think we're going to take this one out. This has got a lot of competing elements here, and particularly the bright areas, which I think are pretty distracting. They don't occur in a place that kind of, I think, helps the photograph. And the fact that the subject of the sculpture is part in shadow and part not, and kind of not well defined, I think we're going to take this one out. Interesting idea, just didn't quite work. This is very nicely printed, but it just, to me, it lacks real interest. It's just sort of like, oh, here's an interesting place. You have the stair rail and you have the window, and you're not quite sure what the picture is. I mean, you know what you're looking at, but you're not quite sure what you should be looking at. I think the different elements here don't really work together. Perhaps if the window had been totally separated from the railing and become a discrete element, it might have worked better. And the stairway, the stair treads don't appear to be sharp here. They may be just because they're worn, because the rest of the picture looks pretty good. But anyway, I think this just doesn't work, so we'll take this one out. And the subject here is interesting, the kind of wild man look with good lighting on that. But you've got all of this stuff on the right-hand side that's kind of pulling you over there. What is this? And to me, they're kind of like two different photographs here, and they're not really kind of hanging together. So even though, I mean, I think this would have worked better just as a portrait of the wild man on the left, but because I think the whole photograph kind of doesn't really hang together very well, we're going to take this one out. Well, it could be a person, it could be a fly. It's so tiny, it's really hard to say. It's an interesting concept, but I think that the subject is so small, the sky is pretty blah. I think for this photograph to work, there probably needs to be somewhat less of the photograph and a little bit more, which would mean a little bit more of the subject, in other words, cropped. And I think that sky needs to be a much more darker, intense blue or intense black if you were doing a black and white photograph. So to me, the sky is just kind of really blah, and the subject is so small that, and I don't see any detail in the snow, and I think that huge white blank area really is not good. So I think this is definitely will come out. It's a good attempt to something interesting, but it just didn't work. Well, it seems like a lot of the really better photographs in this tonight are portraits. You often see that many portraits. I think this is a really well lit, well done photograph, and we'll leave that in for now. Well, I'm still trying to make out what this photograph is. I know it's drops, but that circle of drops up there is just, it's really kind of bothering me because I can't figure out. I don't know if it's real or if it's been faked or what. But anyway, the whole thing to me doesn't work. It's also tonality-wise, it's there are no real pure blacks here, or very little. Needs to be, I think, more contrasty. But that upper part just doesn't work for me. I just don't know what's going on there. The one drop and the elongated drop in the bottom work, but then the top is a whole different thing. So I think this just does not hang together, and the tonality is not really good enough to sell it. So let's take this one out. Well, you see so many photographs of spiral staircases, but I really like this one because of the vase in the niche in the upper left. I think that kind of sets it apart from most photographs of this genre. So I guess that's a Valentine down on the floor. The things that are going on with the table are complicated and on the floor, which kind of takes away from what I like about it, which is the stairway and the niche, but we'll leave this in for the moment. That's a very nicely made photograph. I wish that the sky were more dramatic. I think the sky needs to be more dramatic. It's got detail. It's not that's a bad sky. I think it would really heighten the drama of this photograph. It's a very nice photograph, but I think compared with a lot of the others, it's not as strong. So we're going to take this one out. It's a beautifully printed photograph and taken photograph. It's really, everything is sharp. It's really well done technically, but I don't think it's nearly as interesting as a lot of the other photographs. So despite the fact that technically it's wonderful, I think we're going to take that out. There really, for me, there really isn't any sort of subject here. It's a lot of pieces of derelict machinery. Something needs to kind of stand out, and I think the printing here is a little bit flat. The ground, the foreground on the ground is very out of focus. It might be helped by being darker. So anyway, together, it just doesn't really hang together. For me, it does not. So I think we're going to take this one out. Okay, so now we've got to get 7, right?
Yes, 7.
First through fourth and 3.
I think we have about 12 there.
Hey, Bob, you want to take this and move it over there and use this table? Here's a number.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would be good.
Go ahead, pick up that side, Bob, put it right next to it. My side.
Six, 13. Okay.
I'll take this from you, that way you can look. Okay, thanks.
Okay, this is number one. This is second. This is third. This is 40. This is one of the honorable mentions. Yeah, that's the first one. One of them. That's another honorable mention. This is the last one.
Right, tonight's unlimited mono. Honorable mention, Miss Rosita Fred Venetia.
That was taken at the graffiti warehouse. And we were trying to shoot a old Hollywood type thing, and it worked out pretty well.
Honorable mention, the old church, Doug Wood. Doug isn't with us tonight.
I'll see if he says anything online.
Okay. Honorable mention, Bob Weber, and that's just a bunch of disc heads.
What's his title?
Disc heads.
I don't even know what you're saying.
Disc heads.
Heads.
Disc heads.
Yeah,
When you take apart a hard disk.
right. Hard drive.
The actual heads are the little tiny pieces here,
Heads, okay.
and those are the arms that hold the heads.
I got you.
Lots of them. Fourth place, Doug Wood, the display. Third place, Mr. Temple, Fred Venetia.
That was shot in here, and that's the first time I ever used LEDs. And I guess I have to think about using LSD. No, I'm sorry. LEDs, okay? I don't use LSD. Okay, he did it. He was late, too.
Second place, Ron Piper, Jesus is Waiting. Ron isn't with us tonight. And first place is Jamila Fred Venetia.
That was shot at the graffiti warehouse with one light, and it was all model. She just knew exactly what to do. I just clicked the picture.
Nice.
I would suggest when you're printing portraits that you think about not using very glossy paper. I think that for me, portraits work better when they're not on very glossy paper. So that's just a personal aesthetic. But when you look at the portrait and it's sort of very shiny, I think that can be kind of a distraction. So, for what it's worth.
Just ask Doug. We'll ask Doug to put up one.
Doug said about his, the first one, the staircase, was from the Walter Museum field trip. And then the one was somewhere in Scotland, don't remember where. The raw beams are from the 800s.
Right. All right, this is unlimited color with a few novices thrown in. For the people. Under Mama's wing. Brandywine blue ceiling. Dreamsicle dragonfly. Swan liftoff. Blue and gold. Frederick Angels. Balanced inflation. Bear's ears. Church. Wear orange. Sensuous folds. Pimp my ride. Can you feel it? Superior sunrise. Rainbow pathway. DC Fashion Week. Bell Tower. Lunch. I'm mad at you. Harborside. Book monster. Chapel of Ease. Portal. Micro bubbles. Chapel at the Tetons. Windy Skyway. Hooper's Island Sunset. The Blue Mosque. Just flying around. A little nip. Surfer challenging gravity. Warmth. Blue drop. Entranceway. There we have it.
How many are there, Carol?
30. So we want 4, first through fourth, and 3 honorable mentions.
So that's a really nice use of sort of color contrast. The people in the foreground being so vividly colored, and the buildings in the sky being so muted. So I think that works pretty well. So we'll keep this one in. I think the left 2/3 of the photograph work really well, but the out of focus wing on the right with whatever the white is behind it seems to me very distracting. And, the left 2/3 works very well, but the right 1/3 is pretty distracting. So I think we're going to take this one out. Colors are really interesting. The design seems to me kind of a little bit boring. It's nicely done, and the colors are really nice, but I think we're going to take this one out. It just doesn't seem to have a real interest to me. I need to look at this one up close. Okay, again, we have this problem that when people put them behind maths, you got to make sure they stay where they're supposed to be, because that's really kind of gets it all messed up when you have it like that. We'll leave this one in, but I mean, it's. I think this is very nice. The lighting is beautiful. They caught it at a really interesting. Would be nice if there was even more disturbance of the water from the wings, but I think that's a quibble. So I think that we'll definitely leave this one in. The bird is really nice, but that kind of weird green background to me, is very distracting. I keep being drawn to that green leaf and the green in the upper part of the picture. I think that just really clashes real badly color-wise with the parrot. So we're going to take this one out. It's a very nice photograph. It's interesting color patterns, but it just doesn't strike me as being all that interesting. So we're going to take this one out. Subject-wise, technically it's well done. There's a lot of the boards, and the boards are not particularly interesting. They probably need to be more contrasty. There's, like more than at least half the picture is taken up by the boards. I would have thought this might have worked better had the top and particularly the bottom been cropped out, and maybe a little bit more if there was that in the picture. There must be because of the format on the sides of the air gauge. So I think even though it's a nice, interesting photograph, it's just not as good as a lot of the others. So I'm going to take this one out. Well, this is a striking photo. I'm going to look at the background here to see. Okay. It's very striking. The colors to me just don't look right. I mean, maybe they were, but somehow they look like they've been, something's been done to them. Maybe just the contrast cranked way up. Anyway, the sky is bothersome, but we'll leave this one in. I think this works. There is a good center of focus here. I think it's well balanced, but not at all boring. So I think we'll definitely leave this one in. Well, the orange is obviously intended to be in your face. It seems a little bit much to me, but it is really interesting doing this with everything in the background being in black and white. And so it does work. Maybe a little bit over the top, but we'll leave this one in. It definitely shows some skill in the use of Photoshop. This has the potential, but I don't know, everything kind of looks fuzzy to me, and the dark area in the bottom in particular, it doesn't seem to work. And I think that maybe if it had focused on the center of the picture, it would have worked a lot better. So I think this just doesn't quite hang together for me. It doesn't seem to be strong enough in terms of focus. So take this one out. This is a really interesting photograph. The kids and the microbus or whatever it is there. Not sure it's as strong as some of the others, but I think it has enough interest that we're going to keep this one in. I think that's. I think this photograph is made as much by the people in the background as by the subject. They don't intrude, but they kind of lend credence, and they almost seem like they're all surging in the same way he is. I wish this had been printed in reverse so he was going to the right, but that's a quibble. I mean, he was obviously taken this way. So I think that, I wish there were a little bit more space on the left-hand side, that he had a little bit more room, but I think it's still very well done. We'll leave this one in. This is obviously a very wide angle. The skyline is tilted. It's not just curving, but it's tilted a little bit, which is a little distracting. But I think that this is a beautifully lit photograph, and I think it works really well, despite the fact that I see the skyline going off, sliding down to the left. But anyway, it's really beautifully done, beautiful lighting. So we'll leave this one in. This is a very nice photograph, well printed, well done. I think the thing that bothers me is the two really dark shadows going across the pavement there, which is really the most interesting thing of this picture. And so I think that because of that, even though it's very nicely done, I think that's enough of a distraction that I'm probably going to take this one out. I know you can't get rid of those shadows, so just... I mean, this is very well done, but I think that there's just, for me, there's just too much distraction in the background. There are just too many different elements. There are the people that works, but the green light, the sloping roof, the vertical windows, those things all kind of keep yin and yanging me from place to place, and keeping me from really focusing on perhaps if this had been cut down to a vertical and gotten rid of a lot of the right and left-hand side, it might have worked quite a bit better. So I'm not sure, but anyway, we're going to take this one out. It's a very nicely done photograph. I want to look at the clouds. Yeah, there is enough detail on the white clouds, but I don't know. It's just, it's very busy. I think it's really too busy. And maybe if the lower part had been cropped out and a little bit of the sides, I don't know for sure. But anyway, I think that it's very nicely done. There's also some pretty obvious vignetting in the upper corners, which I think is distracting. If you notice, the sky gets very dark very rapidly. A little bit of darkening is good, but I think there's too much there. It's distracting. So I think that we'll take this one out. Okay, well, with these close-ups, you have to really look and see how sharp they are. I think that, this kind of photography is really difficult. I've had a lot of failures myself. And I think in this case, the flower and the bee are just not quite sharp enough. So even though it's close, it was a near miss, I think. So we'll take this one out. I think also the background around the flower is kind of distracting. So maybe if the green had been toned down, it might help. There's a lot of contrast between the purples and the greens. Out, sorry. I should stop talking. Okay, well, this is certainly a striking picture, and you wonder if the photographer ducked for cover as soon as he took the picture. It would be nice if the claws were a little more in focus, but it's hard to get these things. The feathers are pretty good, so I think we'll leave this one in. Certainly well printed. This is very nice. It's kind of right in the middle, which is a little distracting, but it's not really bad because the buildings are above the center line. The blue of the water strikes me as being somewhat unrealistic, and that kind of keeps bothering me, but maybe it is realistic. It may not have been, saturated up anyway. So let me look at one thing. The spot here, right here, is disturbing. I'm not sure what that is, but I think it must be something with the sensor, some dirt on the sensor or something. I can't tell. It doesn't look like a cloud. It's too distinct. Anyway, that's a small thing, but I think that's something that really should have been taken out. But it's beautifully photographed. We'll leave this in despite my reservations. Well, this is very, to me, this is very clever. It's a real photoshoppery with what's been done with the books at the top, but nonetheless, I think it's kind of clever. The only thing that I find weak about this is that the very upper part of this sphere is kind of blah and light, and I think that it would have helped if the photographer had just burned that down or gotten rid of it, because it seems to distract from the rest of the picture, which is very sharp and precise. So despite that, we'll leave that in. This is a very nicely done, nicely printed photograph, but the background's not all that interesting. It's different. If it was like all tall green pine trees on both sides, it might work better. And somehow the greens and the blues of the tombstones don't strike me as being realistic. And so I think for those reasons, we'll take this one out. Well, obviously, depth of field was a bit of a problem here. It looks like the statue is not quite sharp. It's close, but not quite. There are a lot of distracting things, not a lot. There's some distracting things like on the edges and the bottom that probably would have been better cropped out. A little tighter cropping of the picture probably would have helped. But the fact that and the sculpture is so lit that it almost appears white. I think that might have been burned down a little bit to get a little bit more detail in it. And maybe if there were more detail, it might appear sharper. So it's a nice photograph, but I think we're going to take this one out. I have to look at these micro bubbles. Well, it's certainly an interesting photograph. It would be nice if it was a little bit more, if the picture had been cropped a little bit more. They were a little bit larger, the microbubble, the water was a little larger in the image, but still very interesting. We'll leave this one in. The sky and the mountains just, I don't know, maybe they look like some old slide film that was kind of, the colors were a little bit funny. Trees, the green of the trees looks a little funny too. So even though it's a nicely done photograph, I think that the colors here probably are kind of bothersome. So I think I'm gonna take this one out. Mountains are very good. Well, maybe this was a key bridge just before it fell down. It's shaking from the vibration. I don't think so. But I'm not quite sure what the photographer was trying to do here. It's interesting, but everything is kind of fuzzy, and it gives you the impression that everything was shaking. And the bridge, if it was shaking like that, it probably wouldn't survive. So even though it's an interesting concept, I guess it just doesn't work for me. And so we're going to take this one out. Certainly a very beautiful photograph. Colors are beautiful. I wish the heron weren't directly lined up with the sun, because everything is in one plane. I think it would be a lot better balanced if the heron was a little bit off to the right, in particular, to balance that shaft of red from the sun. But it's still a very nicely done photograph, and so leave that one in. Certainly very nicely photographed and obviously very relatively low light. I thought at first looking at it wasn't that sharp. When I look at the minarets, I see it. Everything is really very tack sharp. I guess that to me it just seems a little bit flat, but it's well done for the time of day, when of course the light is not particularly strong. It's flatter. We'll leave this one in. I thought maybe the feathers of the body were not sharp, but in fact they are sharp. The wing is moving, but that's obvious because it's moving very fast. The background is very distracting because there are all these white areas that kind of keep pulling your eye away from the bird, even though the bird is very strong. And I think that it needs a background that works better for it. And this background, I think, is just there's too much going on there. There are too many light areas. And so I think take this one out, even though it's very well photographed. Well, this is obviously very nicely photographed, very sharp and brilliant colors. But, you know, I just don't see a whole lot of interest here. The bird is you know, the feet and everything. It's just not kind of working as a whole. There are too many things. The very white feathers take you away from the head, and the feet are very orange, and they're almost in the middle, take your attention. I think that somehow it's just too complicated and not sufficiently delineated as to what you're looking at, even though you know what you're looking at. So I think that we'll take this one out. Okay, I think this is really nicely done. The spray is well delineated, which is a critical thing here. And we'll leave this one in. This one has a really nice mood to it. Very muted colors. The figure stands out. I think this works very well, so we'll leave this one in. Okay, now in this case, the flying droplet ring or whatever it is seems to work a lot better. It's a lot better delineated than it was in the monochrome, and it's a lot more interesting. It almost looks like a head facing to the left with a nose and an eye. I'm not sure I don't think that was the intention, but I think it's really interesting, and so we will leave this one in. I think the color works here a lot better than the black and white did. And this is nicely done, but I just don't think it's all that interesting. And the railing going straight up in the middle is kind of distracting. I think that's not a helpful element. And just in general, I don't think it's nearly as interesting as a lot of the others, so we'll take this one out.
You wanted to check that count? Because I was tracking the ins and the outs, and I have a total of 35. You told me 30. That would give us one more 8.
Okay.
Unless I was too enthusiastically marking. Well, that should have been included in the count to tell us how many page extras.
We have 18 in.
That's my count.
I have 17.
That's my count.
Yeah, I think the 31 or whatever was without, there were like 4 or
Right.
5
Yeah.
novices. I think that's what happened, yeah. So that means there'd be 4 honorable.
Correct.
Right, okay. Do you want to run through or spread out?
We're just spreading out.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready to do that.
Anybody want more coffee, cookies, anything like that? Going once, going twice?
Take some hot water.
Yes, it is.
And here's some sugar right here, cream. Here's a with a spoon. All right. And this is and we got some cookies over here. Look what I-
What was the final total?
Okay. Right.
Can we get rid of coffee and stuff we want? Water?
Put a couple of cookies aside for me.
Go ahead, take.
Well, when I take these off.
We only got a couple. You know, just,
Pop them in there.
how many you want?
Just two.
Get 3. Huh?
All right, great. Excellent.
Okay, let me give you the first 4, and then I'll work on the honorable mention.
Okay.
This is first.
First.
This one's second.
The second. Well,
Yeah, they're using that to launch all the boats.
Right.
The bridge.
When do they start putting up the cranes? The cranes are en route.
Oh,
The
really?
metal off, yeah, they're en route. Should get there about 11:30 tonight. Where is there a viewing point for the cranes? On the Baltimore side or on there on the county?
There's a community called Stony Beach.
And this one's 4.
They have a walking pier. Now, they have some private property signs, but I've never been asked or stopped or anything.
Okay.
But actually, that's still not even a great location because
oh,
now where I'm talking about
I'm trying to get them closer to.
is right here, Stony Beach. But the problem is Brandon Shores has a thing that goes across. Let me see if I can find it.
Those are
And the honorable
Right there.
mentions are
See, that's your
This
view
one?
from that area.
Right.
So you may need to go across the Baltimore side to get something better. Now, Fort Smallwood also has a small park There's a small area. Yeah, you've got this
Face him, right?
Weinberg Park. I'm not sure if you're going to see anything at this Weinberg Park or not. Yeah, Fort Armistead's going to be off limits.
Face him, right?
Yeah, I don't know, but when I flew the drone, I flew it from here. And oops. But if you look down here real good, you can see there's like a walkway. And that's where I flew the drone from. That I parked down here, but it's got private property.
Yeah, if you're there,
Sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
there half an hour and they're quiet and polite and all that, it doesn't matter. If 10 cars came in all at once as a photography club trying to take pictures.
Yeah, I went yesterday morning at 9:30, and I had no problems.
Okay, unlimited color. Honorable mention. Blue drop. Christine Milliker.
No, hold it down in front of the camera.
That one.
This was in preparation for the last tabletop night. John and I got out the water drop rig that we brought in here for everyone to use, and we were making sure it was working right and everything was going on. So this
Blue
was
drop.
one of our water drops from.
How do you get the big splash at the top?
There's multiple drops, and if you do them fast enough, it bounces up and they splash into each other.
Okay.
You guys missed the tabletop night, or you would have been able to do it.
Honorable mention, Mike Thomas, Swan Liftoff.
I took that up at Cape May near the lighthouse, the nature walk along the beach there.
Honorable mention, Can You Feel It, Ken Temple.
I took that image at my church, and that was a performer that was there performing.
Honorable mention, Ron Pfeiffer, Hooper's Island Sunset.
And unlike some of my other photographs, that's the real sun at that real location, and that's the real bird. It's all real. And I just did some post-processing to try to make sure the colors worked. And actually, Ron, I tried to line up the bird with the sun, so that was my mistaken composition.
Fourth place, surfer challenging gravity, Mike Thomas.
I took that at Nag's Head at the tail end of their surfing competition last September.
Third place, book monster, Bob Weber. That was taken at the Delaplane Art Library a week or two ago, and the teeth-like things suggested a face, so I just sort of put the eyes in. Second place, warmth, John Milliker.
That was one of those cathedrals we did many years ago up in Canada, and it was just such a nasty yellow color. I was playing with some hue values, and I really liked how that came out.
The blue really works in that. Beautiful mood.
Superior Sunrise, first place, Chuck Gallegos. Oh, there you go.
That was from a sea cave along the shore of Lake Superior at a photo workshop with Ian Plant in 2020.
Great. And there we are.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we will see you next week for our program by Betsy Wilson. And we will see you next week. Thank you. Have a good night. Bye.